The waiter hadn't even brought dessert yet. When my son stood up, not to make a toast, to empty my pockets. At first, I thought he was joking. He walked around the table smiling. "Sorry, everyone, I just need to prove something." Before I could ask what he meant, his hand went straight into my jacket pocket. The room froze. 23 people sat around that private dining room. My grandchildren, his college friends, his in-laws, 2 business partners. Even the restaurant owner had stopped outside the glass doors. Daniel pulled out my wallet, opened it, counted the bills, then held 5 $100 notes above his head. "There it is." His voice echoed through the room. "My missing $500. Nobody spoke. My daughter whispered, "Daniel, what are you doing?" He ignored her. He looked directly at me. "I knew it. I told everyone. You've been taking cash for months." The words didn't even make sense. "Taking cash?" He nodded. "Every time you visit, money disappears." I didn't want to believe it, but now, he shook the bills in the air. "Here's my proof." Around the table, people slowly moved their chairs away from me, not dramatically, just enough, as though theft might be contagious. I reached for my water. My hand wasn't shaking. It surprised even me. I took one sip, then asked only one question. "Are you finished?" Daniel frowned. "Finished. Embarrassing yourself." The room became silent. He laughed. "I'm embarrassing myself. You stole from me." His father-in-law folded his arms. "Daniel, maybe call the police." One of Daniel's business partners immediately agreed. "If someone steals from family, they'll steal from anyone." Several heads nodded. It was fascinating how quickly certainty spreads. Nobody had asked a single question. Nobody wondered why a 73-year-old retired school principal would suddenly risk his entire reputation for $500. Then my youngest granddaughter, 8-year-old Emma, raised her hand like she was in school. "Dad?" Daniel looked down. "What is it, sweetheart?" She pointed at the money. "Didn't Grandpa already have that?" Daniel smiled impatiently. "No, honey. He just took it." Emma frowned. "But I saw Grandma put it in Grandpa's pocket." The room stopped breathing. Every eye slowly turned toward my daughter-in-law, Rachel. She looked confused. "What?" Emma pointed again. "When Grandpa went to wash his hands, you said, 'Don't tell anyone.'" The child smiled proudly. "I didn't. I waited." Silence, heavy, uncomfortable. Rachel suddenly stood. "Emma, you're confused." The little girl shook her head. "No, you folded the money. Then you put it in Grandpa's blue jacket. You said it was a surprise." Nobody spoke, not even Daniel. He stared at his wife, then at me, then back at the money still in his hand. For the first time all evening, he looked uncertain. I slowly stood, picked up my napkin, folded it neatly beside my plate, then looked around the room. "I'll save everyone some time. No police, no arguments, no explanations." I reached into my inside pocket. Not for evidence, not for documents, for my reading glasses. I put them on, looked directly at Daniel, then quietly said, "You've accused the wrong man, but much worse, you trusted the wrong person." I turned, walked toward the restaurant exit behind me. The room finally erupted into shouting. I never looked back, because I knew something they didn't. The $500 was never the real theft. And by tomorrow morning, everyone at that table would understand what had actually been stolen. The next morning, nobody called me. Not Daniel, not Rachel, not the relatives who had watched me become a thief over dessert. They were too busy asking one another the same question. Why would Rachel put the money in Harold's pocket? Everyone assumed the answer was simple: a misunderstanding, a bad joke, an awkward attempt at proving a point. It wasn't. At 9:30, my doorbell rang. Daniel stood outside. He looked as though he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. "Dad, I need to explain. You need coffee." I opened the door. He followed me into the kitchen. Neither of us mentioned the restaurant. Not immediately. I poured 2 cups, sat across from him, and waited. Eventually, he spoke. "Rachel says Emma imagined it." I stirred my coffee. "Do you believe that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Did you take the money?" I looked at him for a long moment. "After everything that happened, that's still your first question?" He lowered his eyes. "I'm trying to understand." "No, you're trying to avoid understanding." I stood, walked to the hallway closet, returned carrying an old wooden box. It wasn't locked, it never had been. I placed it on the table. Inside, hundreds of folded pieces of paper, everyone dated, everyone handwritten. Daniel frowned. What is this? Open one. He unfolded the first note. March 12 found $20 on Daniel's kitchen counter after groceries, left it beside the fruit bowl. Another. June 8 cash envelope under television stand, placed it inside top kitchen drawer. Another. October 250 bill in washing machine pocket returned to Rachel's purse. Daniel kept opening them. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. For nearly 12 years, every time I found money lying around their house, I'd written down where I returned it, not because I expected gratitude, because I spent 41 years as a school principal. Keeping records had become second nature. Daniel looked up slowly. You wrote all of these? I forgot most of them, but paper remembers. He leaned back. I never knew, you never asked. Just then, his phone rang. Rachel, he answered on speaker. Where are you? At Dad's. Her voice immediately sharpened. Leave. We need to talk before he starts manipulating you. I quietly kept drinking my coffee. Daniel looked at the wooden box, then asked, Rachel, why did you put the money in Dad's pocket? Silence. 5 long seconds. Then, Emma saw you. She's 8. Exactly. Children. They say inconvenient things before they learn to lie. Rachel suddenly changed tactics. You know what? Forget the money. Your father has been turning you against me for years. Daniel looked confused. What? He always acts innocent. He makes everyone else look crazy. I finally spoke. Rachel. She stopped talking. This conversation isn't about me. It's about $500. No, it stopped being about $500 the moment you convinced my own son to search my pockets in front of his children. Silence. Then she quietly hung up. Daniel sat motionless. Finally, he whispered, I don't understand. You will. He looked at me. What does that mean? I walked into my study, opened one filing cabinet, removed a thin blue folder. Inside were photocopies, not bank records, not legal documents, birthday cards, Christmas cards, anniversary notes, every card Rachel had ever written me. I handed him the top one. He read aloud, Thank you for treating me like the daughter you never had. Another, You're the kindest man I've ever known. Another, I hope one day our children grow up to have your heart. He slowly lowered the papers. What happened? I answered honestly. I don't know, but people don't suddenly become cruel. They slowly become comfortable being cruel. That afternoon, Daniel left carrying the wooden box, not because I asked him to, because he couldn't stop looking at it. As he reached the front door, he turned around. Dad, if Rachel really planned this, why? I looked out the kitchen window before answering. Because she wasn't trying to convince the family that I stole. I met his eyes. She was trying to convince you. Once a son believes his father is a thief, he stops questioning everything else. Daniel stood perfectly still. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about $500. He was wondering how many other lies he'd accepted simply because they came from the person he trusted most. Daniel didn't go home. Instead, he drove to the one place neither Rachel nor I expected. The elementary school where Emma studied classes had just ended. Parents filled the sidewalks. Children poured through the gates carrying oversized backpacks. Emma spotted her father immediately. She smiled. Daddy, he knelt beside her. Can we get ice cream? She nodded excitedly. 5 minutes later, they were sitting in a small ice cream shop 3 blocks away. Chocolate for Emma, black coffee for Daniel. He waited until she had taken her first bite, then asked quietly, Can I ask you something? Emma nodded. You're not in trouble. She smiled. I know. When Grandpa went to wash his hands, what exactly did you see? Children don't tell stories the way adults do. They don't summarize, they remember details. Emma pointed to Daniel's sugar packets. Grandma Rachel folded the money like this. She folded one packet in half. Then she opened Grandpa's blue jacket. She pointed toward the empty chair beside them. She pushed it inside. Did she say anything? Emma nodded. She said, Now he'll finally stop pretending. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Anything else? Emma thought for a moment. Grandma Rachel looked at Uncle Kevin. They smiled. Daniel frowned. Uncle Kevin? My brother-in-law? Uh-huh. He nodded. That wasn't part of the story anyone knew. Kevin had been sitting beside Rachel all evening, completely silent. Daniel suddenly remembered something. When he'd accused me, Kevin had been the first person to suggest calling the police, almost as though he'd already known where the money would be found. That evening, Daniel drove straight to Kevin's office. No phone call, no warning. Kevin looked genuinely surprised. "What brings you here?" Daniel closed the office door. "I've got one question." Kevin leaned back casually. "Shoot." "Why did you smile at Rachel before she planted the money?" Kevin's face didn't change, not immediately, but his eyes did for just a fraction of a second. They widened, then he laughed. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Daniel stepped closer. "My daughter saw both of you." Kevin shrugged. "She's 8. I've heard that argument already." Silence, then Kevin sighed. "You really want to know?" Daniel nodded. Kevin stood, walked to the window, looked down at the traffic below, then quietly said, "It wasn't supposed to become this big." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. What wasn't? The dinner, the accusation. Rachel only wanted everyone to stop trusting your father. "Why?" Kevin laughed bitterly. "Because your father kept asking questions." "What questions?" "About money." Daniel froze. "What money?" Kevin turned around. The charity account. 2 years earlier, Rachel had convinced Daniel to start a small family charity. Scholarships, school lunches, sports equipment for low-income children. Daniel proudly donated every year. So did his business partners. So did dozens of friends. Rachel managed everything. Everyone trusted her, including me. Until 6 months earlier, I had asked one innocent question. Why aren't the scholarship numbers matching the fundraising dinners? Rachel changed the subject. "Next meeting?" I asked again. She smiled, then cancelled the discussion. After that, she stopped inviting me. Now, everything suddenly made sense. Kevin rubbed his forehead. "Rachel said if people believed your father was stealing, no one would believe him if he questioned the charity finances." Daniel whispered. "She framed my father to protect herself." Kevin closed his eyes. "You didn't hear that from me." "No, I heard enough." Daniel walked out without another word. He didn't drive home, he drove to my house. It was almost 10 o'clock. When I opened the door, he wasn't crying, he wasn't angry, he looked sick. I know why. I looked at him quietly. Why what? Why she did it. He sat heavily in the chair across from me. "It was never about $500. I slowly nodded. "No, it never was." He looked at me with disbelief. "You already knew. I suspected. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if I accused her, you would have defended her." He lowered his head. I know." Then I placed one simple object on the table, a small spiral notebook. No legal papers, no hidden files, just handwritten dates, questions, donation totals, missing scholarship payments, names of children who never received the assistance they'd been promised. For 6 months, I had quietly written everything down. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I couldn't bear the thought of children paying the price for an adult's greed. Daniel slowly opened the notebook. The color drained from his face. Because every page answered the same question. The $500 had never been stolen, but something far more valuable had been trust, and by sunrise, Rachel would discover that once trust disappears, no amount of lies can ever buy it back. Daniel didn't wait until morning. At 6:15 the next day, he unlocked the charity office with his own key. For 2 years, he had proudly told everyone, "My wife handles all the paperwork." That morning, for the first time, he actually looked at it. Not the brochures, not the framed photographs, the books. Rachel arrived 20 minutes later carrying her usual coffee. She stopped cold when she saw him sitting alone in the conference room. Boxes of financial records surrounded him. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slid one receipt across the table. "Tell me about this." She barely looked at it. "It was for a fundraising dinner." "No, it was a payment to a luxury spa." She smiled nervously. "That's a bookkeeping mistake." He slid another paper toward her. "And this?" She glanced down. "A designer boutique, also a bookkeeping mistake?" Another receipt, weekend resort, another, jewelry store, another. Private vacation villa. The smile slowly disappeared from her face. Daniel stood. "There are 87 transactions. 87 mistakes?" She folded her arms. "You don't understand non-profit accounting." He laughed once, a tired laugh. "I understand addition." She changed tactics. "Your father filled your head with this." "My father never mentioned a single receipt. He didn't have to. I finally opened the files myself." For nearly an hour, she had an explanation for everything. typing error, temporary reimbursement pending adjustment, missing invoice, accounting delay. Every answer sounded polished, until Daniel opened one final folder. Inside were handwritten letters, not financial records, letters from parents. One mother wrote, "My son was told he'd receive a baseball scholarship from your foundation. School starts next week. We've heard nothing." Another, "My daughter cried herself to sleep after learning the scholarship had been cancelled." Another, "Thank you for considering us. We understand there were no funds available." Daniel looked up slowly. No funds? He reached into another folder, held up photographs from the same month. Rachel, standing beside an $80,000 luxury SUV she'd purchased. The room became silent. She finally stopped defending herself. Instead, she whispered, "I was going to put it back." Daniel stared at her. "With what?" "My inheritance." He couldn't believe what he'd heard. "So, you stole from children, planning to replace it someday?" She began crying, real tears, not dramatic, panicked. "You don't understand how it started. I only borrowed a little, then another fundraiser covered it. So I borrowed again. It just kept growing." Daniel closed his eyes because he'd heard those exact words before, from gamblers, from addicts, from fraud cases on television. Never from his own wife. He quietly removed his wedding ring, placed it beside the stack of receipts. "Yesterday, I thought my father was a thief. Today, I know who actually was." She reached for his hand. He stepped back. "No, don't. The man you framed spent 30 years raising money for children, and you stole from those same children just to make him look guilty." That afternoon, the annual scholarship ceremony still went ahead. The community center was packed. Families, teachers, students, volunteers. Rachel's name had been printed on every program as the evening's keynote speaker. When the chairman walked onto the stage, he quietly announced a change. "Mrs. Rachel Bennett will not be speaking tonight." Instead, he looked toward the front row. "Mr. Harold Bennett, would you do us the honor?" I hadn't prepared a speech. I walked slowly to the microphone, looked across the room at dozens of nervous children waiting to hear whether they'd won scholarships. Then I smiled. "I've been asked many times why I spent 40 years helping children who weren't my own." I paused. "The answer is simple, because every child deserves at least one adult who refuses to give up on them." The room became completely silent. Then I added one final sentence. "And if an adult ever steals from a child, they shouldn't be trusted with another child's future." No names, no accusations, no humiliation. Everyone already knew. 6 months later, the charity had been rebuilt. Every missing scholarship was restored. Anonymous donors stepped forward after hearing what had happened. Daniel resigned from the board, not because anyone asked him to, because he believed leadership had to be earned again. He spent every Saturday delivering sports equipment to schools himself. Not for publicity, for forgiveness. As for me, I never spoke publicly about the $500 again. People sometimes asked if I regretted staying silent while my own son accused me. I always gave the same answer. If I'd defended myself, he would have spent the rest of his life wondering whether I was lying. But when the truth uncovered itself, he never had to wonder again. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't destroying the person who tried to ruin you. It's standing so firmly in the truth that their own lies collapse under the weight of what they became.